My guest today is perhaps the UK's most controversial police officer, a commander in London's Metropolitan Police. Ali Dizaei was born in Iran. He studied law in London and became a high-flying spokesman for ethnic minority police officers. Ali Dizaei, welcome to Hard Talk.
Good to be here.
You came to the UK as an Iranian. You obviously naturalized. You studied here. You were very successful in your early years in the police force. You became a superintendent in the Met. You were tipped for very high office, for great things. You've introduced the idea of racism in the police force and in the wider community, and I want to come back to that because you've for many years spoken about that, and I'll ask you about it. Your colour, the fact that you're from a minority, didn't impact your Metropolitan Police career. You were doing very well. You were on a fast track.
I love the job I do. I'm good at what I do. I catch criminals, I detect crime, and I increase public confidence. And I've been graded as exceptional in delivering frontline policing. National Black Police Association and myself have challenged the IPCC's integrity over racism and the way it deals with people of colour, including the Duggan case and many other cases. Come and walk with me in the streets of London. Let's go to some of the boroughs that I have been a borough commander, where I have reduced crime by 30%, where I had increased public confidence. They will come to me, Stephen, and they will shake my hand, and they say, you should stay in the police force because we need people like you. We need radical advocates of equality in the police service so we don't suffer with the cancer of racism that we are suffering today.
Well, but getting back to this idea of racism spreading like cancer, let's just look at the facts.
Yes.
You know, there is no doubt the Met's been through a very difficult time with allegations of racism. The very important report written after the murder of the young black man Stephen Lawrence, which talked about institutional racism inside London's Metropolitan Police Force, it has been very difficult. But in the years since that report was written, and we've had, what, about 12 years since then, we've seen the number of black police officers in London rise from something like 3.5% to something right now around 10%. And the current commissioner insists that racism and racists simply will not be and are not tolerated in his police force.
Got no reason to doubt the commissioner. Those sentiments have been ventilated before.
And the figures speak for themselves.
I know the figures don't speak for themselves. Let me just help you with an analogy. The Metropolitan Police looks like a pint of Guinness. It's black at the bottom, white at the top. Now, you can have as many police officers of colour in the streets of London. That is laudable, and that is something I support. But we are never going to see a black or Asian commissioner, certainly in our lifetime in this country, and we certainly do not have. No, we don't. We certainly do not have.
How do you know that? If there is a black or ethnic minority policeman of sufficient talent, how do you know? How can you be sure that he won't rise to the very top? For we had Tariq Ghafoor, who was an assistant commissioner.
And look what happened to him.
Well, exactly.
Look what happened to him.
People would say because, frankly, he didn't have the talent in the end to get anywhere close to the top job.
But that's simply one argument, though, isn't it?
Well, would you argue he did have the talent,
absolutely.
given what happened to him?
I have worked with Tariq Ghafoor, and I certainly think he had all the accoutrements and all the credentials to be a commissioner, and certainly a chief constable, and he relentlessly applied to be a chief constable in West Midlands, in Greater Manchester Police. The problem with the police service in this country, we've made a lot of inroads in tackling racism, and I've always been the advocate of saying that to places like Council of Europe. The problem we have in this country is the question of sticky floors. It's no longer...
So what do you say to the black former now, but the black chief of police in Kent, Mike Fuller? He got to the very top in his county, and he was a black man.
Yes, and we've been recruiting people of colour into British police service since the 1960s. One black chief constable? Come on, in any objective view, you know, there are 14 boroughs in London where people of colour are more than their white counterparts. We've got cities in this country like Leicester, who are super diverse cities, and you are quoting one black chief constables in 50 years of recruiting. Now, in any objective view, that simply doesn't stack up. We've got no black chief constables, we've got no assistant commissioners in the Met, despite the fact that by the year 2015, 60% of people in London are going to be from the ethnic minorities. And that cannot be right. And words and sentiments are not going to deal that.
Well,
you need real action. But when I talk about system, I'm not saying that all the system is bad and all the system incorrupt. In any democratic society, you will have miscarriages of justice. System occasionally don't work because when you are persecuted, when your employer spends £12 million trying to put you in jail and finally succeeds, then you can sit here and comfortably say that something is not quite right. That doesn't mean that the British criminal justice is flawed in any shape or form.
Ali Dizaei, we have to end there, but thank you very much for being on Hard Talk.
Thank you.